Death is a natural part of life. It happens to everyone. Most people shy away from thinking about death until it happens to someone they know. But behind the unthinkable lies a vast network of people who've dedicated their lives to easing the transition. Thousands of morticians, medical examiners, coroners, gravediggers, and embalmers work largely in the shadows to keep the world spinning. I wanted to understand this career path and what would lead someone to dedicate their lives to the unthinkable question of death. So, I sat down with a key player in the business of death to learn what life looks like inside the morgue. I spent the day with Connor Eline, a licensed mortician. He works at the family business, Eline Funeral Home, which traces all the way back to the 1860s. Since then, the funeral home has expanded to 3 locations across Carroll County, Maryland. I sat down with Connor at the Hampstead, Maryland location. Connor, you're a 6th-generation mortician. Did you ever want to follow a different path?
I never was pressured by Dad, and that's the honest-to-God truth. And my dad was never pressured by his dad. Dad and I both grew up above the funeral home here in Hampstead, but I lived above the funeral home until I was in the 3rd grade.
What did that childhood at the funeral home look like in comparison to other children?
I guess, to be honest, I knew nothing different. I thought it was neat that we lived in a big, in a house that had a big downstairs. We had visitation rooms and chapels, and I thought it was so neat that we had a Coke machine in the basement lounge. Gosh, we used to ride our bikes or scooters down the hallways when there was no services going on or anything. I didn't really know anything of it. I always loved working or seeing my grandfather and my dad work around the funeral home. If I was homesick from school, I could, walk down and be in Dad's office with him and Pop-Pop. And that relationship that him and my grandfather had was really what inspired me to come into the business, because I wanted, and I had, hoped and prayed to have the same working relationship with my dad that he had with his, and I absolutely do.
Morticians are largely responsible for providing a wide range of funeral services. While families only see a brief glimpse of what it means to be a funeral director, the job requires a delicate balance between scientific and emotional intelligence.
A lot of folks don't see that amount of detail and care that goes on behind the scenes. A loved one could be in an accident, and there could be trauma, and the hours and hours that it takes to do the reconstruction and the cosmetics to make their loved one look presentable, or to even make it look like nothing happened. It's truly an art.
With all that in mind, I wanted to know more about what exactly makes a good mortician.
First thing that just came to mind is attention to detail. We're meticulous in what we do. Whether that is allowing someone to have a lasting memory picture of a loved one that's better than when they saw them in the hospital. I try to kind of break the status quo of what a funeral director is. I didn't want to be the tall, pale man in a corner wearing a black suit or a top hat looking like the Undertaker. I enjoy relationships with people. That's really what brought me back into the business, was community and relationships.
What sets Eline apart, according to Colin, is the relationship they build with their community, and the lengths they go to make sure each service is unique.
We've had karaoke before, at the services. There's so much that you can do to personalize all those aspects. We've placed golf clubs in the flower arrangements, whether it be favorite clothes, or we had a service many years ago. The gentleman was a Jimmy Buffett fanatic. In the corner of the visitation room, we placed down a tarp, and we brought in a whole bunch of sand. I made a little beach display in the corner, a little Jimmy Buffett display, and we had his Jimmy Buffett Hawaiian shirt on, and we just made it just a warmer environment.
Despite the heartwarming and rewarding aspects of the business of death, this line of work can also have an impact on a person internally.
We do truly encounter a lot of terrible things, and we're there to be the strong ones to carry forward with the family and to help them. But you really can't take that home with you. So I guess there comes a point where you have to have separation of work and home to then be present with your loved ones or family or friends. And they have no idea what you just saw today, or who you've encountered, or who you're helping, or what you're helping folks through. But I think in order to be mentally strong and present with your loved ones, you have to have that ability to kind of leave it at work.
So based on these experiences that you have, do you feel as though you understand or view death differently than other people?
We grieve in our own ways too. We are there to be the strong ones when someone we know's friend or family member dies. You're there to be their anchor. But when it is your own family member things, it still is very personal. And we are human. We do have emotions. It's not like as a funeral director you're emotionless. I can still remember to this day exactly where I was when my grandfather died. I was in the living room at home practicing a golf swing in the living room, and Dad came home, and just immediately broke down. Like, to see him cry for the first time in my life, like, his dad was his best friend. We're still human and we still grieve the same way.
In working under such a strong taboo, those in the business of death have a lot of power. Countless families place their trust in these workers to take care of their loved ones in their most vulnerable states. The business of death requires a strong moral code and a keen sense of ethics every step of the way.
I don't look at a funeral as a transaction. It's a relationship. And there's stigmas in the funeral profession, stigmas of just not being personal, being cold, kind of going back to being the man in the black suit. I think it's nice to be authentic, to be humble, but also to be sincere in all of your actions. But it is hard sometimes. People come into this being nervous or being sad, and they have a distrust, and you want them to then be able to trust you.
Because of this vulnerability, the business of death can teach us a lot about human nature. How would you say this career path has impacted your view of humanity?
I don't think it's tarnished it at all. I think, if anything, it gives you hope for humanity. It gives you hope for people, because we do encounter folks that come up on the worst day of their lives. And to see a family come together, to work together, to get through that, through their faith or through their relationships, is extremely rewarding to see.
Having the opportunity to talk to someone in the business of death really opened my eyes to just how much goes on behind the scenes. This career path is filled with people just like us, thinking, feeling, caring, and working. The only difference is, their work largely goes unnoticed simply due to stigma. The great unknown raises many questions, but some answers can be found by just allowing yourself to ask.
Life is short. It's a cliche, you never know when your last day is, or your last moment could be. I get caught up in the moment sometimes in my own busyness with work or volunteering or social activities, but then you don't realize how important those little moments are. And sometimes you become numb to that. We all do. And then someone that you know suddenly passes away, and you're like, wow, we really need to be present with each other. We really need to be there, because you never know. And it's a true cliche. You never know when your last moment can be. So you really need to live your life to the fullest.
Thank you so much for listening. This has been Mary Burke with The Business of Death.